Hello! Welcome to Crafternoons. I'm Rebecca, and today we're going to be making our own mini stop-motion movies.
To begin, let's talk about what stop motion means. Stop motion is an animation technique in which you have objects that you photograph in a series. In between taking each photo, you move the objects slightly, and once you put all the photos together in a video, it looks as though the objects are magically moving by themselves. There are many different ways to approach making a stop motion film, but for today, we're going to use an app called Stop Motion Studio. You can download the app for free on a phone, tablet, or computer. So before we get started, you'll want to make sure you have it downloaded on whatever technology you'll be using today. Just a note that there is a pro version of this app that requires payment. We will not be using this version. We'll be using the free version because it already has everything we'll need for our project. Now, before we dive into making our stop motion movies, let's gather our materials. The first thing that you'll need is a phone, tablet, or computer with the Stop Motion Studio app downloaded. Next, you'll choose the objects that you're going to be photographing for your movie. And this can be any object depending on the story that you're trying to tell. In this example, I used a toy car. In this other example, I made origami rocket ships that I moved around so they look like they're flying. One material that's often used in stop motion is clay. And when we use clay in our stop motion, we can call this claymation. In a previous lesson I taught called Collaborative Clay Animals, I went through the steps to make your own Play-Doh, and then use that Play-Doh to make clay animals. So if you still have your Play-Doh or your animal and want to use that, feel free to do so. Or if you want to work with clay and did not watch this lesson, you can go check it out. Again, it's titled Collaborative Clay Animals. Lastly, you'll need a clear space to work. I'd suggest somewhere that is free from distraction and has good lighting for your movie. Lights, camera, action! It's time to make our own movie. To start, I'm going to set out my clay frog, who's going to be the star of my movie. I'm also going to look for some other objects to help set the scene. So I found these air plants that look like they would be found in a swamp. To take my scenery even further, I'm going to create a backdrop using construction paper that will go behind my character and the objects that I picked out. Paper is just one material that you can use to make a backdrop, but you can experiment with other materials as well. For my backdrop, I decided to combine two sheets of paper together. So here you can see me gluing those. I also wanted to add some more detail to my backdrop. One material that I used was masking tape. I think it has an interesting texture, so I put a couple strips of tape down the side of my paper. For a final touch, I'm going to use a marker to create a wave-like design on my paper. I'm trying to make it resemble water since I am going for this swamp frog theme. Now that my backdrop is finished, I'm going to prop it up behind my frog and the plants. I want to make sure that my backdrop is secure so that it's not moving around when I'm trying to take photos. I ended up using a piece of tape to tape the paper to the back of my desk. Depending on where you're working, you might secure your backdrop to a wall or find some steady object you can prop it up with, like a cardboard box. Now I have my scene all situated and I'm looking at the lighting. Off screen in the upper left-hand corner, I have a lamp that I'm using to provide light. My lamp is a form of artificial light, which means I can control the light. Some other examples of artificial light are the lights that are on your ceiling, a flashlight, a light from your phone. These are lights that we can turn on and off, and they stay consistent. I would highly suggest using artificial light instead of natural light, which is any light that comes from outside, whether it's through a window or a door, because natural light will change throughout the day, depending on where the sun is positioned in the sky. So once your lighting is all set up, you can work on positioning whatever device you're using to take photos. Towards the bottom of the screen, you can see my phone, which I've been working on positioning for filming. So I've decided to prop it up on this box of Sharpies I have, then also use this yellow and orange vase to support it on the side. So if you can't get the right angle that you're looking for, you can always use objects to prop up and stabilize your device. Just make sure that it's secure so it won't fall or move when you're trying to film. Now to show the view from your device, when you open Stop Motion Studio, you'll get a menu that looks like this. To begin your project, you'll press where it says New Movie. You'll see it has a gray rectangle with a white plus sign above it. Now you're in Stop Motion Studio. You're going to allow it to access your camera roll, and you can see the view from my phone. I'm going to continue to adjust the angle of my phone until I capture my scene and my character the way that I want it to look. To begin taking photos, I'm going to hit the camera icon that's in the upper right hand corner along that sidebar of my screen. This will open a new window where I can take photos by pressing the red circle button on the right side. Before taking my next photo, I'm going to move any part of my scene that I want to move. In this case, I'm just going to move my frog slightly. You want to take your movements very slowly, making small changes between each scene, because this will make the movements in your final movie look much more smooth and believable. Your movie's length will depend on how many photos you take. So the more photos you take, the longer your video will be. Stop motion can be very time consuming because it does take a lot of photos, even to make a pretty short video. Since we're beginners, your video doesn't have to be super long. In fact, it's best to start with a shorter video until you really get the hang of these skills, and then you can try making them longer. Another thing that I would suggest is trying to finish photographing in one sitting, or to make sure that your scene is in a place where it won't be bothered if you do have to go and take a break. If you move the device you're using to take photos, know that it might be hard to move it back to that exact position, which is why it can be easier to take all your photos before you have to move your device. Moving back to a bird's eye view, you can see my phone and my scene as I continue to move my frog and to take photos. still making very slight changes between each photo. Not only am I moving the body of the frog, but I'm also moving the head. When you're using clay, it's so malleable that you're able to move multiple parts of your character. So while you might simply be moving your character forward, you can also move parts of the body, like the head and eyes, the legs and arms. In between each photo, you can be making multiple changes to your scene. You don't have to just move one part of your character. You could be moving multiple parts as long as you're slowly moving them in between each scene. You can also be moving parts of the scenery. So now that I've taken all my photos, you can see I'm scrolling through the thumbnails that appear at the bottom of my screen. I can press the play button and see how my stop motion movie looks. I noticed that one of these photos has my finger in the frame, so I can scroll through the thumbnails, find that photo, click on it, and then it'll give me that option menu to delete. And now I can press play and watch my movie through. Looks good. I'm pretty happy with how it turned out. So now I'm going to hit the back arrow that's in the top upper left hand corner. And this will take me back to my main menu. If I click on my video, I'm able to title it. So I'm going to title it Frog Explores. Now I'm going to reopen my video by clicking on it to show you a couple more features you can use in this app. One is to add sound to your video. You can click on that microphone button, which is on the left-hand toolbar. And you can press record. You can talk, record music, create sound effects, whatever sound you want to go over your movie. Another feature, if you click this gear-shaped icon that's on the left-hand toolbar, you can pull up the settings. The first thing that pops up is movie speed. This allows you to adjust the frames per second, which means how many of your photos will be shown each second. So if your frame per second is 5, which is what I'm using, that means that 5 photos that I took will be shown for each second of my movie. You can play around with which speed works the best for your movie. The next option over in settings, I can click on to add a fade in at the beginning of my film. So I'm going to click on the crossfade option, and then I'll scroll to the beginning of my movie so you can see how it'll look. So you can see that gradual fade in that occurs. If I go to the next setting over, this lets me change the aspect ratio, which means how my movie is cropped. I tried out a square crop, but it did cut off part of my scene, so I wasn't a huge fan of this, but it is always an option if you want to use it. The next setting over has some special effects you can use that overlay your screen. So this one has some clouds and some grass. So that's another area you can play around with to see how it might look. The next setting over are different filters. I'm just going to try out the black and white, but there's also rainbow and different color schemes that you can use. The next setting is video quality, which we're not really going to mess with. And then the last setting you can adjust is the playback of your movie. So you can either have it loop, meaning it will continually repeat, or you could have it only play once through, which is what I'm going to do. And once I've made all the adjustments that I want, and I'm happy with my movie, I can return to my home screen. Then I can hit select in the upper right-hand corner. and it will allow me to select a video. I'm going to choose my Frog Explorers one, and I'll see the blue check mark show up. And then in the upper left hand corner, I can click on the box with the arrow pointing out of it, which is the second icon from the left, and this will allow me to export my movie. So I can save it to my photo library, and then from there I can send it to people, post it on social media, do whatever I want to do with my movie. I hope you enjoyed making your own mini stop motion movie. Here's my final product after all that work. My movie is on the shorter side, but again, stop motion can be a very time-consuming thing, so when you're just starting off, it's okay if it's a shorter movie. We can always grow and try new things, so as you get the hang of it, you can try to make even longer films. And that's all for today. Hope to see you at our next Crafternoons.